Hey, Billy the Big here. Thanks for joining me once again. Just dropped off a loaded trailer, hooked and empty. And we are departing for our next stop, which is, I think, in Arkansas. And then I believe after that, we shall probably get dispatched back to DFW. Well, one never knows. You know. And heck, could, just like last week, could always get a phone call while I'm on the way from A to B saying, "Hey man, change plans, brother." Happened a couple of times. Anyway, for anybody new to the channel, my name is William. Thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. What we talk about here is recovery and spirituality. I've been in the recovery game since 1988. This does not make me some kind of authority or guru. It doesn't make me better, faster, stronger, smarter than anybody else. And for God's sakes, it sure hasn't made me any prettier. But it has afforded me a lot of time drinking coffee in church basements, getting to see what works for folks and what doesn't. And I'm here to pass along lessons learned, many of which come from doing things the hard way. Anyhow, today's topic, I wanted to talk about feelings. When I first got clean, I spent a lot of time in a fellowship centered around recovery from marijuana addiction. When I started going to those meetings, that fellowship had only been around for a number of weeks, single-digit number of months, before I showed up. And I was brand new. In fact, my clean date starts sometime after I started going to those meetings. We were a bunch of new guys. Almost nobody had worked the steps. You know, if you asked anybody what step they were on, it'd be 1, 2, or 3. Or they hadn't started the steps yet. Did they have a sponsor? Not yet. And that's neither good nor bad. You all start out at ground zero. I start out at ground zero. They start out at ground zero. We all start out at ground zero. But we were all at ground zero together. Feelings were a huge thing. I mean, God, those early meetings, the first couple of years or so, feelings had to be the topic of discussion in the meeting at least half the time. You know, and, you know, we were all a bunch of new guys. A lot of us didn't have a lot of mentorship. And we're trying to parse this out, right? So why are feelings such an issue? What are they? Why do we have them? I don't have definitive answers to some of these questions. I have some ideas on the subject. I'm well trained enough in psychiatry, psychology, neurobiology, and evolutionary neuroscience to qualify me to drive this tractor trailer around. So, you know, take whatever I say on today's episode with a grain of salt. It is just, I wouldn't even say it's my opinion. It's the theory that I'm operating under at this point in time to best make sense of what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've experienced. And if it's helpful to you, great. And if not, well, your cover charge will be happily and graciously refunded. Here's the thing. If you think you have a better idea, go ahead, post it in the comment below, because I would be curious to hear it. Um, I'm open to a new idea. This is still stuff I'm looking to hash out, even this far in the game. If this is helpful to you, if ideas I give you are something you can utilize to get good result in your life, great. If it just gives you a starting point to come up with your own ideas, your own theories of how this works, great. Anyhow, let's get into it. It's my understanding, it's my layman's understanding of neurobiology that brain chemistry is actually it's pretty inefficient, energetically speaking. It takes a lot of metabolic horsepower, as I understand it, to run our brains. A large lot of blood flow goes up through the neck into the dome to run the brain. A lot of calories are used. That's as I understand it, and I'm open to correction if anybody knows better. It's also my understanding that both the brain and the body try to be as efficient as they can. So they utilize shortcuts wherever they can. I have the feeling, sorry, Matt, but here's my thesis, okay? That there's an evolutionary advantage to emotions, that it's a low resolution way of storing data. Say that you're going to take a picture, be it on a camera, a digital camera, or on a cell phone. Usually you can adjust the resolution of that photo. A higher resolution allows finer detail. That comes at a cost. The cost is that the file size is bigger. It's a bigger file. It'll take longer for you to upload a 4K video than it will a lower resolution video. It requires more space in your computer to store that information as well. Now, where's the benefit to us? The smaller file with less detail is more quickly and easily manipulated, retrieved from memory, and stores away smaller. The brains of organisms, and that would be any organism, be it a fish or a human or a cow, there's a finite limit. There's only so much room for memory. And we need to be able to retrieve things quickly. My theory is that the emotions give us a very low resolution snapshot that gives an advantage to organisms that were able to develop emotions. For instance, say that somewhere early along in the evolution of mammals, adults came into being that found it pleasurable to take care of young, immature offspring. Well, obviously, that's an evolutionary advantage, because if it is pleasurable, if it is pleasing to the parents to care for their offspring, then their offspring have a better chance of being fed and protected and living long enough to reproduce themselves. They may carry that tendency or that trait. You can see where that would have an advantage for survival of that strain of that species, so then it becomes species one. It probably goes way back in biology. Well, what's that have to do with me in recovery? Check the mirrors here. got a lane changer 2 coming up quick. So anyway, back to the topic. What's this have to do with me in recovery? Well, understanding myself, why I have feelings. Also a great low resolution way of storing data for things that are going to help me individually to survive. I find some tasty food going back millions of years on the savannah. My great ancestors, they find tasty food. This causes a feeling of pleasure, and they remember this plant with a pleasurable association. That emotional imprint, that feeling comes back. So they see that plant and that feeling, that emotion, they remember that and they go, oh, this plant good. And that's a lower resolution, more easily obtained way of remembering it than trying to think that, you know, on some day I saw a plant, looked like this, smelled like this, ate it, it tasted good, I didn't get sick, and I felt energized afterward because the food had calories in it. So it's a low resolution, easily stored, easily retrieved way. Same thing with negative stuff. You know, my great ancestors, the Neanderthals, Zog and Thog, were rummaging and foraging outside the cave one day, and a saber-toothed tiger eats Thog, and Zog is traumatized. And he has a very strong negative emotion seeing his clansmen eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. And that fear, that emotion, is a low-resolution way that data can be stored. So he doesn't have to stop and think, oh, that's a large yellow feline with stripes and big tusks hanging out of its mouth. That is an apex predator. It is fast and agile and bloodthirsty and loves to eat us Neanderthal. No, he doesn't have to sit and process all that. The low resolution information comes out like, ah! And that's all he needs, because that primes him. That puts him into a heightened state of awareness, cortisol and adrenaline dump, and it allows him to evade or avoid the next saber-toothed tiger. Evolutionary advantage. The problem comes for me. Let's see, that's why I spouted it over then. The problem comes for me when these things that were shortcuts for the brain, when they are something that triggers in me a response. If I get stuck in resentment comes, the root words of resentment, I was told, come from re, like repeat, and sentir, which I think is Latin, sentir, sentir, which means to sense or to feel. Yeah, I'm re-feeling something. If it is something unpleasant that I am feeling, that will trigger a low level of adrenaline and cortisol. These are stress hormones. Stress hormones are good. They kept Zog from getting eaten by the saber-toothed tiger the next time he saw one, after he saw Thog get eaten by one. Those served us well. But having a steady drip of this doesn't. Not good for us. Not healthy. There have been studies showing that it is linked elevated, chronic, just ongoing levels of elevated cortisol and linked to a lot of kind of issues. But let's not make cortisol bad. So what's the answer? Well, the answer is that feelings are something that evolved in me as just a quick and dirty way of triggering me when I need to access some data. One of the things that was said in early meetings I went to, and it was said by people I respected, and I believed it for a long time to be true, is that my feelings lie to me. And that was an answer. That was an answer, and it worked for me. Didn't work perfectly, it turns out, but it worked because it explained why I would feel one way, but if I wrote some stuff down and talked to it about something, talked about it to somebody, apologize, I get tongue-tangulated. Welcome to the world of the neurodivergent. But anyway, I'd write stuff down, analyze it. My feelings would match what appeared to be objective reality. So this idea that, well, your feelings lie to you. It's a somewhat good and perhaps somewhat correct answer. Somewhat correct in that my feelings seem to be not in track with reality, and I cannot use them as a barometer or a compass that I can't just unthinkingly follow. Then someone told me that my feelings are always correct. And I said, nah, I found they don't match with reality. Then someone else that I respected said, feelings are always valid and always correct. And I was resistant to that still, even though I respected this person. Then a couple of more individuals who I respected quite a bit gave me a little more complete of a statement. They told me that my feelings are always correct, always justified, that they are on point if referenced against the inner narrative that I have. Whatever story I'm telling myself, whatever beliefs that I have that are coming into play, that if I look at those, then my feelings, they're going to be tracking with them. So I rolled around with that and kind of poked and prodded at that idea for quite some time. And what it looks like to me is that my feelings tell me that there is a low resolution piece of information being stored here, and that I should look at the story I'm telling myself that is causing these feelings. And that seems to be the best answer I've got yet. Seems to be working so far. I haven't found an edge case or a boundary where that idea has broken down yet. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I haven't run across it at this point. So right now, it's the best answer that I have. And to stop and think about it. The fact that we do the inventory process that we do. You know, we do that fourth and fifth step. We do the daily spot check in the 10th step. We start out at the beginning of that by going through with feelings. And then we analyze it. We pull the thread. And we get to the underlying narrative. And then we have to dissect, what is the validity of this? Where is this narrative correct? Where is it not? How is it serving us well? How is it serving us poorly? How is it putting us on the wrong path and getting us a result we don't like? So feelings, I would say, are useful. I think they're something we evolved with because they were advantageous. Let's use them to our advantage so that we know where to do work. We know where to examine, and we can use them not blindly. Because if I blindly follow my feelings, well, hell, that has not worked well for me a lot of times. But I've been told by people I respect, and so far it appears to be true, that I can use my feelings to tell me if I interpret them, if I examine them, if I'm honest with myself about them. Okay? So there's some yeah buts, there's some caveats to that. But with those conditions, I can use my feelings as a guidepost or as a compass. Because if my spirit feels good, not necessarily my ego may take pleasure in saying that snappy, snarky remark, My ego may be gratified by getting that pint of ice cream and scarfing it. Whereas I'm telling myself, I really don't want to have a six-pack. Well, that pint of ice cream's pointing me towards pony keg, not six-pack. But when I, at the end of the day, think about how did it go, and I look at how my spirit feels, not how my ego has felt, but my spirit, then usually that's a pretty good barometer for whether or not I'm heading in the right direction. So as I said, a lot of this is opinion, a lot of this is theory. It's the opinions I have from my education and my experience. Everybody has different education and different experience. They have different opinions, reach different conclusions. Hey, that's cool, man. I put it out there so that if you're asking questions about this topic, that maybe what I've said will help guide you towards a useful answer for you. With that, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, even if it's sunny out there and not pea soup fog like I'm driving through, I hope you're safe, well, and happy. And until next time, see you out on the road.